Hello, I'm Matthias Razum, working with Karlsruhe. I'm head of e-science there. And well, I'm going to focus a little bit on research data. Infrastructure is ubiquitous for all of us. We are surrounded by infrastructure every day. In most parts, it's invisible, and the same is true for our scholarly communication infrastructure. So today we already heard a lot about the mechanics of this infrastructure, but of course we take it as a given in many cases and don't think so much about the challenges. So what are the challenges? Well, one challenge is not to be redundant, to be the fourth speaker here on the panel, but other challenges include that it is a very distributed system with many, many thousand actors that are spread internationally. We have publishers, we have service providers, we have researchers, learned societies, research organizations, and we have the data spread around the globe. So what we really need is a way to relate all those objects in a reliable way. And we already heard about persistent identifier, the importance of persistent identifiers. We heard about ORCID and researcher ID for authors, collaborators, all the actors. We heard about Ringgold for institutions, Crossref for publications, Open Funder Registry for funders. Yes, I learned something already. But what about research data? And I think it's really becoming more and more important to think about research data if we think about scholarly communication infrastructure. Why? There's recommendation for good research practice. The German DFG, Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, have come up with recommendations that state that you should make the data available for at least 10 years if you base your publication upon that data. The funders, for example, like the EU with the Horizon 2020 program, they request open data for funded research. So you have to have a place to actually store the data securely for a long time, and 10 years doesn't seem to be so long, but if you have a long-running project, it might be 10 years plus your project runtime, which might be, well, in Germany there are Sonderforschungsgebiete that might run for 12 years, so that's already 22 years. If you publish your data, you want to be able to refer to that data for much longer time. So we need to have very stable, reliable infrastructures for research data. So can we just reuse the existing infrastructure we have built so far? And I think that's not the case, because I'm afraid research data is a different kind of beast. Why? There are several reasons. One is the volume. Research data grows exponentially, much faster than the number of traditional publications that we are facing with. The second one is the complexity of the data, heterogeneous data formats. Quite often you are faced with binary, undocumented, proprietary data formats that you have to handle. And that also is a challenge for research and discovery, because in many cases you might find the metadata that is indexed, but the data itself is not searchable, even with well-known search engines. So file format is a challenge. The many data repositories just expose metadata, but not the data itself, so the data is in the dark web. Researchers have very specific queries that are not easily being expressed in this one search slot of search engines. And there's a lot of non-textual research data that we have to think about. Another challenge, roles and responsibilities. So for the traditional publication business, we have very well-established role and responsibilities. But when it comes to research data, it's still very open and unclear. So we have just seen that there are commercial entities, service providers coming up with solutions for research data repositories. There are other players like learned societies, publishers, but also research institutions that come up with their own solutions here. There are disciplinary repositories versus institutional repositories. So there's a lot to be settled in the near future. Then, of course, we have versions. So we just learned about the best version of a paper. But what is the best version of research data? It's often not stable. So even though we have something like DataCite that allows us to persistently identify a data set, the data set itself is quite often not persistent. It changes over time. It's been improved. New data is added to the data set. So that's something that we cannot really handle in our well-established scholarly communication infrastructure. How can we handle versions in a proper way of data? That requires very specific infrastructure that handles those versions correctly, that uses timestamps, but then again, your queries, so the type of data that you requested at a certain point in time might change because new data has been added, data has been replaced or updated. So probably we need to think about having persistent identifier for queries instead of data sets, or maybe both of them need persistent identifiers. Another challenge, and that's been mentioned before, is how can our infrastructure actually help researchers to build their scholarly credit? How can we attribute their work correctly? And I already mentioned the UIs for data sets, so that's DataCite. But I think we need more infrastructure to support researchers that their work is properly attributed and they're credited for. I think that the Thomson Data Citation Index is a great step in the right direction, but I think we need much more to motivate our researchers to actually deposit their data and make it available. And finally, and I think that's the biggest challenge we are facing is, oh, sorry, I missed to click on this remote, so that was the slide I actually was talking about. And the biggest challenge here is sustainability. So how can we sustain those infrastructures we need to build to include research data into the scholarly communication infrastructure? Because I think that's much more demanding than what we have seen so far. And that's roughly what I wanted to say. I think we already made great progress, but I think we still have to address several challenges in the near future. Thank you very much.